Let's bring on the Mountaineers. Goes around about the 50, the 10 to 5. A touchdown with Virginia. He did it. He did it.
That's with White. Beavers and he's gone. Touchdown. Tavon Austin.
As the hills of West Virginia resound with the sounds of Golden Blue football.
They want to have a 7-on-7 drill. We want to make it a fist fight. Nothing cheap, nothing dirty, but West Virginia football.
From the heart. Streaming. It's Mountaineer pride.
Once a Mountaineer, always a Mountaineer.
Leave no doubt tonight. No doubt. They shouldn't have played the old Golden Blue.
West Virginia is a special place. People of the state that have great pride in this WV logo.
Ain't no stopping the Golden Blue.
It is a great night to be a Mountaineer wherever you may be.
And now it's the show brought to you by Mountaineer fans for Mountaineer fans, the Country Roads Webcast. What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome into episode 182 of the CRW podcast here for our Cincinnati Review and Reaction edition. And what a dominating performance from West Virginia, leading from start to finish on a day in which they honored both the seniors and legendary coach Don Nehlen. West Virginia does it the right way, winning in an impressive fashion, and we're going to get into that win here, break it down, provide our takeaways from that game, as well as review the statistics from that West Virginia victory before taking a look around the conference and recapping the other action that happened around the Big 12. So with no further ado, let's get into that, and let's talk about some takeaways from West Virginia's 42-21 victory over Cincinnati in the 11th game of the WVU football season. All right, Mountaineer Nation, what an impressive win for West Virginia in their final home game of the 2023 season, finishing their home slate at 5-1. So good job defending their home turf this season and winning the games they're supposed to win there when they had that home field advantage. They defended that turf yet again here against Cincinnati to get their 7th win overall on the season, 5th win in Big 12 conference play. So good to see West Virginia win the penultimate game of the season here. Now one more left to go to hopefully get to 8 wins next week on the road against Baylor. But in regards to this win over Cincinnati, obviously there are a lot of things to talk about when you have such a dominating performance, and a lot of things to, compliment and I guess celebrate here on this episode. So that's exactly what we're going to do here. We're going to get into my takeaways from the game. I've kind of got it broken down in my notes here, quarter by quarter. So with no further ado, let's get into it. Starting with West Virginia, of course, winning the coin toss, deciding to receive the opening kick. Obviously, we're hoping to get off to a fast start, and they actually did kind of right away on the beginning of that first drive. Of course, the first thing I noted was Jaheim White getting his first career start at running back. You guys that follow us here on the Country Roads Webcast know I'm a big fan of his and been waiting for that to finally happen, him getting more involved in the offense. Thought it would come the further and further we got into this season. Now here we are, the penultimate game for West Virginia, and Jaheim White finally gets that first career start, and he certainly made the most of it. We'll talk more about that as we continue throughout here, but West Virginia does get off to the fast start as they intended to. Play action pass on the first play, and it's a deep crossing route to Traylon Ray. Good throw by Garrett Green, hits him in stride for a 28-yard gain on the first play of the day for West Virginia. Then you hit a quick little smoke or now screen, whatever you want to call it, to Rodney Gallagher III, and he makes some guys miss and picks up 12 yards on West Virginia's second play. So 2 plays into the game, and West Virginia is already on Cincinnati's 39-yard line. Then you get Jaheim White getting involved in the action, picks up 11 yards on the third play of the game for West Virginia. So 3 plays, 3 first downs. Nice little start there for West Virginia, but unfortunately it would teeter out as West Virginia would then have a run get stuffed on the first down following that third play, then a penalty on their second down play, which was a holding penalty, one of very few West Virginia would commit in the game, and one of the few mistakes they made overall in this contest would put the Mountaineers back behind the chains there, and as they then would face a 2nd and 20, unfortunately. Green would scramble for 4 yards, but then an incompletion on 3rd and 16 forced Michael Hayes into one of his longer field goal attempts of the season, and he's done such a good job as the West Virginia field goal kicker throughout most of this season. Unfortunately here, it's a 52-yarder, and it's just a little bit bit long as he unfortunately pushed it a little bit wide right there. And West Virginia took the opening kickoff. He wanted to get off to a fast start, and unfortunately, after a great start to the drive, like I said, they're getting all the way to the Cincinnati 39-yard line in just a couple of plays. The Mountaineers ultimately come away empty-handed despite that quick start, and I've jotted down in the notes here, will this be costly? Obviously, we now know in hindsight that it wasn't for the Mountaineers, but interesting start there. West Virginia obviously elected to receive the opening kickoff, thinking they'd be able to get off to a quick start, and they had some plays drawn up that looked like they were going to do just that, but unfortunately a holding penalty at the worst potential time really set West Virginia back. Didn't get the opening drive score as they had the past couple of contests, but ultimately it would not matter in the end, obviously, as West Virginia dominated this football game from here on out. Despite the fact of not scoring there, West Virginia's defense shows up on Cincinnati's first possession. Brady Lichtenberg gets the start over Emory Jones at quarterback for Cincinnati. Cincinnati goes with back-to-back runs for Kiner after a screen pass on first down. He comes up just shy, so it's 4th and 1. You're wondering if Cincinnati's going to be aggressive and go for it. They decide not to, and they punt the football, so West Virginia forces a 3-and-out, their first time out on the field, and it would be kind of a trend for this West Virginia defense and what was a good day for them, a bounce-back performance in a lot of ways, especially for the West Virginia run defense. They really played one of their better games of the season as far as rushing defense is concerned in this contest. But despite West Virginia forcing the 3-and-out, Cincinnati is able to flip the field, and West Virginia's second drive would begin inside their own 10-yard line, actually. And West Virginia would count on Jaheim White to give them a little breathing room with their backs against their own end zone there, and he would do just that on 2nd and 10 to begin that drive with an 18-yard run. West Virginia gets that breathing room they were hoping for there. Then later on in the drive, Jaheim White unfortunately would be banged up a little bit on this one. Looked like something with the calf, could have even been a cramp, who knows, but I believe he was out for about a series and a half moving forward there. So we do see a C.J. Donaldson sighting here for West Virginia in the first quarter, and we were curious about the status of C.J. and Doug Nestor. Neil Brown would go on to say in the post-game press conference that C.J. felt like he was good enough to play, at least running in one direction. Hopefully they'll get him back to full strength next week. Neil Brown's hopeful for that. Doug Nestor was available and dressed for West Virginia, but they didn't want to play him. Didn't feel like he was quite ready yet, but he did get in for the kneel-down play for West Virginia because he wanted to be on the participation chart there on senior day in his final game at Mountaineer Field, so Neil Brown let him go out there for the kneel down at the end. But C.J. Donaldson would show up on this drive ultimately for West Virginia on a 3rd and 4, and then he would subsequently run for West Virginia's second first down of that drive on that 3rd and 4 play. And then 2 plays later, Garrett Green goes for a play-action deep ball pass to Preston Fox, which draws a defensive pass interference, and West Virginia crosses midfield on a drive that began with their back against their own end zone here on their second possession. Garrett Green keeps his own read, moving on there once they cross midfield, picks up 22 yards, gets West Virginia into the red zone, and then again on the very next play, another zone read. Garrett Green keeps it himself and runs for 8 more yards. And then a couple plays later, we get our first Justin Johnson sighting of the game, and on 3rd and 2, he picks up a West Virginia first down, putting them down to the Cincinnati 12-yard line. West Virginia gets it down inside the 5, and they face a 4th and 1 here. And this was a sequence that I certainly made sure of to put an asterisk near here, because West Virginia, we know last week, was stuffed against Oklahoma, one-time short yardage, and of course we know about the goal line stand that the Sooners had, and we were all talking about how unacceptable it was for West Virginia with the offensive line they're supposed to have to get stuffed there on the goal line. So you wondered if West Virginia would go for it here on this 4th and 1 inside the 5. They indeed do go for it, and not only do they run and get the first down, they get enough push that Garrett Green gets into the end zone on that run on 4th and 1 on what would be the first of multiple rushing touchdowns for Garrett Green in this football game. Cincinnati gets the ball back there to end the first quarter. We get Emory Jones in at quarterback for their second drive. Him and Lichtenberg would alternate through the first half. Second half, it would pretty much mainly be all Emory Jones. Beanie Bishop would be injured on that first play of the Cincinnati drive, and I was a little bit worried about his status. Luckily, he would come right back in on West Virginia's next drive, but that's one player that West Virginia certainly couldn't have afforded to lose, so glad to see that he was all right, following a bit of a scare there. But in his absence, Aubrey Burks on a 3rd and 2 looked like Cincinnati was going to be able to pick a first down. They had a nice little play action swing pass set up, and Burks was one-on-one with the man there who only needed 2 yards, and an awesome open field tackle by Aubrey Burks to force yet another punt from Cincinnati there on that play. And West Virginia gets the ball back there to start off the second quarter, which, of course, in between the first and second quarter was when they had the ceremony there honoring legendary West Virginia football coach Don Nehlen. He is now forever immortalized at Mountaineer Field following that first quarter. So those are my notes from the first quarter. Let's move on now, getting into the second quarter here for the Mountaineers. And on West Virginia's third possession here of the game, their first in the second quarter, it looked like it had a chance of potentially being a 3-and-out for West Virginia. They're backed up into a 3rd and 8, but Garrett Green, as he would so many times in this game, makes a play on that 3rd and 8, gets enough just for the West Virginia first down. They avoid the 3-and-out, and that would prove to be very huge, because then on the very next play, you would get the longest play of the West Virginia football season to this point, as Garrett Green has Rodney Gallagher in motion. It looks like the typical jet sweep West Virginia's ran many times this year. Instead, they fake that jet sweep handoff. They leak Jaheim White up the seam, and then he runs a corner route. From there, Garrett Green lobs the ball, puts it in a good spot. When he threw it, I thought it was going to be a little bit overthrown, but you see Jaheim White's quickness be able to catch up to it, catch it on his fingertips, catch it in stride, hit the sideline, gets a good block downfield on one guy that may not have tackled him anyways. Believe he was gone no matter what, but the result at the end is a 75-yard receiving touchdown for West Virginia running back Jaheim White, the first receiving touchdown of his career, and as I said, the longest play of the season for West Virginia to this point. So really big one there that we've been waiting to see Jaheim White break. I kept talking about we thought that an explosive play was coming, 50-plus yarder from him. Boom, there it finally happens here at the final game of Mountaineer Field in his first career start, and it comes on his first receiving TD there. So big play for West Virginia, would put them up 14-0, and then they would never look back from there. As West Virginia's defense really stifled Cincinnati for a lot of this game, especially through the first 3 quarters. That continued yet again on Cincinnati's first possession here in the second quarter. West Virginia holds them yet again, gets the football back to the West Virginia offense, and the Mountaineers were absolutely dominating time of possession at this point in the football game. When West Virginia gets the football back, quickly they set up a shot play on first down. It's not there, so Garrett Green, quickly recognizing the defense has a hole, scrambles off for 28 yards. Then on the very next play, handed off to CJ off the left side. He gets into the end zone on one of his few carries of the day, and West Virginia is ahead 21-0 after a 2-play, 40-yard touchdown drive. They score in under 60 seconds. Wouldn't be the only time they would do this in the game, but very impressive drive there from the Mountaineers to score quickly and go up 3 scores over the Bearcats there. But then when Cincinnati would get the ball back on offense, this is when they would have some extremely lucky breaks on their scoring drive here to make this a 21-7 football game, because on West Virginia's defensive possession here, you get a sack for Lee Koba, which was great to see there on senior day, his final game playing at Mountaineer Field. Glad to see him have a good performance that included a sack. Was certainly cheering for that one, as that was on Brady Lichtenberg as he had came back into the game for the Bearcats. But a couple plays following that looked like it was going to be an interception for Malachi Ruffin. He can't haul it in. Break number 1 for Cincinnati on that drive. So then a couple plays later, trying to have a handoff, the running back fumbles it. The ball bounces off the ground, literally comes right back into his chest, goes down, no harm, no foul. Think he got back to the line of scrimmage, may even gained a yard. And then the very next play following that, it's a bad snap. The quarterback muffs it. Looks like Lichtenberg's going to fumble. He's able to recover that. It bounces back right to him, and then he's able to scramble out and find a receiver down the field for a 21-yard gain. So 3 straight breaks right there for Cincinnati on that one. And they came at the best possible time for the Bearcats, because prior to this scoring drive, they had 38 total yards in the football game. But following the break on the bounce back to Lichtenberg and a long pass, he follows up with a long run of his own down to the 1-yard line. Quarterback Emory Jones would then re-enter for the Bearcats for a tush push, and Cincinnati would get onto the board there, making it 21-7 West Virginia. And at this point, with the Mountaineers getting the football back, there was 1 minute and 32 seconds left until halftime, and West Virginia had 0 timeouts, so they were going to try to put together, even less than a 2-minute drill with 0 timeouts, so would need a very good drive to be able to do so. Luckily, Garrett Green came to play today for West Virginia. First play of the drive is a quarterback draw, and it's wide open for the Mountaineers. Garrett Green breaks off a 40-yard run, putting him over 100 yards rushing in the first half of this football game. Then he finds Cole Taylor on a corner route for 15 yards, and WVU is all the way up to the Cincinnati 30-yard line with still 1 minute and 9 seconds left. So it took just a little over 20 seconds for the Mountaineers to march nearly the length of the field there. Couple plays later, Garrett Green keeps the read option, uses his speed, gets into the end zone. It's a 26-yard touchdown run for Garrett Green, and all of a sudden, West Virginia's up 28-7 going into halftime, and Garrett Green was having a phenomenal first half that would turn into a phenomenal football game. And you can't say enough good things about the West Virginia offense in the first half, and of course, the West Virginia defense for that matter. Bounce back performances for both. And the West Virginia offensive line, I think they were challenged in this game. A lot of talk about Cincinnati's run defense, a lot of talk about Dante Corleone, and the Mountaineers wanted to put on a good performance and make a statement, and they certainly did that. Here in the first half, West Virginia had 199 rushing yards compared to only 139 total yards of offense for Cincinnati. So dominant performance for West Virginia in the first half, and a dominant performance for Garrett Green himself. 139 passing yards, 136 rushing yards in the first half, 2 rushing touchdowns and a passing touchdown. Those are just his first half numbers. First ever West Virginia quarterback to ever have 130 passing yards and 130 rushing yards in one half of a football game, actually. So great first half for the Mountaineers there as they cap it off with their second scoring drive of the half that happened in under 60 seconds to take the dominating lead into halftime. And you wondered if Cincinnati would, come back out firing. They put together a good drive to end their second quarter there with Brady Lichtenberg at quarterback. So I was kind of expecting them to come back out with him at the helm, but they would go with Emory Jones and go with him for pretty much the majority of the second half of this football game, actually, and it would not pay off for them. Unfortunately, they would not put together too many more drives until late in the third quarter of this football game. As we get into the third quarter of the notes here, Cincinnati's initial drive of the second half there ends after Marcus Floyd nearly intercepts a third down pass, and it forces Cincinnati to punt the football from midfield. West Virginia would start their drive on their own 12-yard line, but Garrett Green would quickly hit Preston Fox for 16 yards off play action on their very first offensive play of the second half. So picking up where they left off. And then we get a play that I not only put an asterisk on in my notes here, but I actually wrote out wow, because Jaheim White had an incredible juke move on this run, the shades of which I haven't seen since Tavon Austin against Oklahoma. It was one of those type of jukes because he jukes a guy out and then he's using his speed and coming back across the field. And I haven't seen a play like that since Tavon against Oklahoma, really. And it was an incredible run there for Jaheim White, one of the most exciting 12-yard runs that you will see that allows West Virginia to then cross midfield rather quickly on that drive. He follows it up with another good juke move on the next play, and WVU gets a first down on 3rd and 4 on his 5-yard run to set them up at the Cincinnati 26-yard line. And then once they would enter the red zone, Garrett Green would call his own number yet again on a read option, keep it himself, show some juke moves of his own actually on that one that I was a little bit impressed by, and break off an 18-yard touchdown run, which was his 3rd rushing touchdown of the game. And he is the first West Virginia Mountaineer football player since Steve Slayton back in 2007 to have multiple games in one season where he has at least 3 rushing touchdowns. This is the second time he's done it this year as he finishes with 3 rushing touchdowns in this contest against the Bearcats. And that was a drive in which you can call it, kind of this rip your heart out drive. But, Neil Brown had talked about finishing in this game, and I think West Virginia certainly finished on that drive. You take up over 7 minutes of game time, double-digit play count, and that's how you really, rip an opponent's heart out. West Virginia would go up right there 35-7 after that Garrett Green touchdown run. West Virginia's defense would follow that up by forcing a 3-and-out, complimentary football at its finest right there to start the second half for West Virginia, when you knew they would have to have it because you worried about Cincinnati getting the ball first to start that second half. Could they make it close again? Instead, West Virginia gets the stop they need. The offense answers the bell, goes down and scores. The defense says, okay, here's the 3 and out. We'll get it right back to you. The offense says, okay, we'll go down. We'll score yet again. Let's seal this deal. And so West Virginia's offense gets the football back, and they do just that. Garrett Green with a 20-yard pass off a scramble to Cole Taylor, then follows it up with an absolute dart to Devin Carter for 20 more on the very next play, and that was maybe his best throw of the day. Fitted in between the linebacker and the safety, right in the hole where only Devin Carter could get it, and had some mustard on that throw as well. Frazier carries Jaheim White and the defensive tackle Van for Cincinnati there all the way to a 14-yard gain. 2 plays later, Jaheim White would follow it up with a 16-yard run on the very next play, putting West Virginia on the 5-yard line, and then they would go right back to Jaheim White yet again for the touchdown. 3 straight big plays for Jaheim White in what was an impressive game for him. He would go over 100 yards rushing at this point in the third quarter in his first career start. And don't forget, he missed a series earlier in the game. So great performance from him. Already had 75 yards receiving here as well. And West Virginia had 292 rushing yards through 3 quarters of this football game and had just been truly dominant on offense as they had the ball for 8 possessions at this time. 6 of those had resulted in touchdowns. The other 2 were the 1 missed field goal and the 1 punt that West Virginia would have in this entire football game. That kind of wraps up the third quarter. And then getting into the fourth quarter now, where West Virginia would kind of have it on cruise control throughout this portion of the game, obviously when they were dominating in such impressive fashion. From then on out, after the 42-7 lead, Cincinnati would finally break through here early in the fourth quarter. They follow up a big pass play on a third down with a double reverse flea flicker that goes for a touchdown to make it a 42-14 game. West Virginia on top. And on the Mountaineers' next possession, you get a Luke Hamilton sighting, someone I've been wanting to see and was hoping to see get action at least here on Senior Day. He certainly does that, and we saw him play a good bit there in the second half. On this first play of this drive, he lines up as the lead blocker for Jaheim White, and it's yet another Jaheim White explosive run for a 21-yard gain on the first play of the drive. And then the very next play, they go back to Jaheim White, and what does he do? He busts off a 47-yard gain all the way to the 5-yard line. Garrett Green would scramble around and find Cole Taylor in the back of the end zone on 3rd and goal, and it looked like West Virginia was going to have 49 points in this football game, but they called Jaheim White for a tripping penalty. Looked like he was trying to hit a cut block on the blitzing guy. Instead, his leg came up and kind of tripped him. Looked like it was accidental. Hopefully, the defender pace there is okay for Cincinnati, but either way, it's a costly 15-yard penalty for West Virginia. Erases a touchdown. Crazy swing of events there, because then it ultimately forces West Virginia to 3rd and goal from the 23. And instead of, coming away with points there, Garrett Green throws an interception, one of his only mistakes of the game. And as I said, West Virginia made few mistakes in this football game, only a couple that I'm going to point out here. I pointed one out earlier, being the holding penalty. The other one would be the interception thrown there, and of course the penalty on Jaheim White. Those are really the only mistakes that I can point out off the top of my head, or at least that I have jotted down in my notes here, as we've nearly reached the end of those notes, as I only have a few more things jotted down here, those being Emory Jones scrambling for 25 yards on a 4th and 5 for Cincinnati, and then he hits a play-action touchdown pass to the tight end Mateer there. Mateer had 2 touchdown receptions for Cincinnati in this football game there, his second being when Emory Jones found him on that play-action pass on what looked to be an RPO on their 1st and goal to finally get them on the board yet again to make this a 42-21 football game, which would, of course, ultimately be our final score. But the last couple of notes I have jotted down here was an 18-yard run for Jaheim White, which would put him over 200 rushing yards in the game, and he's the first West Virginia running back to run for over 200 yards since 2016, and he does it in his first career start. Don't forget he added 75 yards receiving as well, nearly 300 total yards for the talented true freshman running back who has already been rated by PFF as the number 1 freshman running back in all of college football in his first career start. He puts on an absolute show, over 200 yards rushing. West Virginia would then bring the backups in, Nico Marchiol, Justin Johnson, some of the reserve linemen, but Justin Johnson would deliver the exclamation point a few plays later, breaking off an explosive run to the Cincinnati 10 that would put West Virginia over 400 yards rushing on the game, and they would be able to kneel it out not long thereafter to come away with the 42-21 victory. So those are just some of my notes that I wanted to get into, kind of my takeaways from the game. Now let's dive in and take a look at the stats from this game, both team-wise and individually, in West Virginia's dominating win over Cincinnati to bring their record to 7-4 overall and 5-3 in Big 12 conference play. All right, getting into the stats here in a game in which West Virginia led from start to finish. Love to see such a dominating performance from the West Virginia Mountaineers, winning games here in November and winning at home a lot this season, finishing 5-0, as I stated there earlier. So let's run through the team stats here. I'll share them on the screen for you guys. Watch it on the video side, which if you are tuned into the video version, we really appreciate you doing that, whether it's on the Country Roads Webcast YouTube channel or on the web there at wvsportsnow.com. If you're tuning into that version, be sure to hit the thumbs up button, give us a like. Really helps this video's performance and future videos' performances as well. If you're a West Virginia fan, Big 12 fan, college football fan, be sure to hit the subscribe button. Helps us, helps you, helps get more of this Mountaineer sports content out to Mountaineer Nation. And if you are on the audio side listening, we appreciate that also. You can find us on any podcast platform you like: Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, iHeart, you name it. Just search Country Roads Webcast, but you can help us there by leaving a rating, review, or sharing us around with other West Virginia fans that you may know there. But getting into some of the stats that you guys watching on the video side can see shared on the screen here, but don't worry, audio listeners, I'll read them off for you guys as well. West Virginia, 31 first downs to 18 for Cincinnati. Third down efficiency, a little bit improved here for West Virginia, something we've been wanting to see them do a bit better on the offensive side on third downs, and they did a much better job on conversion downs overall. 6 of 11 on third downs and 2 of 2 on fourth downs, while they held Cincinnati to 5 of 12 on third downs and 1 of 1 on their 1 fourth down attempt that they encountered in this football game. Total yardage, West Virginia completely dominates by 302 yards here. Major discrepancy in terms of total yards there, going in the favor of the Mountaineers. 634 total yards versus 332 for Cincinnati. West Virginia actually ends up running for more yards in the game than Cincinnati gains total. So shout out to West Virginia in the trenches for that statistic right there. Passing wise, West Virginia throws the football for 210 yards versus 191 for Cincinnati. West Virginia, of course, unfortunately did throw the one interception there late in this football game. Rushing numbers, 424 yards for the Mountaineers versus 141 for the Bearcats. Can't say enough about West Virginia's job they did on the ground in this one. I think the offensive line wanted to make a statement for multiple reasons. Talked about the matchup with the good Cincinnati rushing defense. That's why this is no small feat, guys. They're not doing this against a scrub defense. The Cincinnati defense has been good, and particularly been good against the run. They've held 3 different opponents this season under 100 yards rushing total. And also, Neil Brown mentioned that West Virginia wasn't named a semifinalist for the Joe Moore Award given to the nation's top offensive line. West Virginia has, been top 10 in the nation in sacks allowed, top 10 in the nation in rushing for most of the season. So Neil Brown felt like they were slighted a little bit. I'm sure he pointed that out to him, and they wanted to make a statement there as well. Coming into this game, Cincinnati was number 5 in the country in rushing. West Virginia was number 7. Obviously, judging by these results, the Mountaineers will probably move into top 5 rushing in the country heading into the final game of the season. So can't say enough about the job they've done, and this is the best job they've done over 400 yards on the ground. Mentioned in the past, West Virginia is undefeated in the Neil Brown era when running for over 300 yards. Now, guess what? West Virginia is undefeated in the Neil Brown era when running for over 400 yards, as well as they can now add that to the list of things that they've done in the Neil Brown era, as they run 424 yards, averaging over 9 yards a carry versus the Bearcats. Both teams commit 5 penalties in this game. Of course, Cincinnati wins the turnover battle 1-0. And then time of possession, West Virginia ends up with a pretty good advantage, something that we were hoping to see and always hoping to see from this West Virginia team this season. First half, they particularly dominated, but they still end up with a nice advantage, 35 minutes to 25 for Cincinnati. So there's a look at the team statistics. Let's take a look at some of the individual numbers, and there sure were some good ones for West Virginia. We've touched on some of them briefly, but let's run through them here. 12 of 19 for 210 yards, 1 TD, and 1 interception for Garrett Green. Jaheim White, what a performance in his first career start. Can't say it enough. An absolute superstar in the making. Really just going to be a special player throughout his West Virginia career, doing these things as a true freshman. 21 carries, 204 yards, and 1 touchdown. And then Garrett Green, 11 carries, 154 yards, and 3 touchdowns. great performance from him as well. Can't say enough good things about the way he responded. I mentioned last week may have been his worst game of the season. I think he followed it up with not only his best game of the season, but probably the best game of his West Virginia career to this point. Justin Johnson gets in late, carries the ball 6 times for 42 yards. The impressive 26-yard exclamation point that I mentioned there to end the game for West Virginia. C.J. Donaldson in a limited role as they're trying to slowly work him back from that injury that he's going to be hampered with for the end of this regular season. We'll see how he performs against Baylor. Still yet, even a non-100% C.J. Donaldson's able to carry the ball 5 times, gain 20 yards, and get into the end zone. So liked what you saw from C.J. in the few times that we did see him in this game. 1 carry, 3 yards for Nico, 1 carry, 2 yards for Rodney Gallagher. Receiving-wise, Jaheim White, the team's leading receiver as well, to go along with his status as the team's leading rusher in this game. And, of course, his lone reception, the first career receiving TD that we talked about, the 75-yarder. Then you get 3 catches, 39 yards for Cole Taylor, 1 catch, 28 yards for Traylon Ray, and then 3 catches, 24 yards for both Preston Fox and Rodney Gallagher, the rare identical stat line there. And then 1 catch, 20 yards for Devin Carter. Looking at some of the defensive numbers here, won't run through all of these. Obviously, I'll scroll through here so you guys on the video version can get a good look at some of the numbers there, but I will shout out a few of these. Starting at the top, of course, got to start it off the right way with the West Virginia senior, kind of the unquestioned leader of this Mountaineer defense, and he had a standout performance in his final game on Mountaineer Field. 10 total tackles, 1 sack, and 1 TFL for Lee Koba. You love to see it. 8 total tackles for Anthony Wilson, 1 sack and 1 TFL for Ben Cutter, who's really come along throughout his true freshman season. 5 tackles for B.D. Bishop. Believe he added at least 1 more pass breakup to his season-leading and nation-leading total there as well. And then you get a TFL for Sean Martin and a TFL for Mike Lockhart as well in this football game. So West Virginia picking up 3 sacks and 4 TFLs as a defense in this contest. And there's a rundown of the team and individual statistics for the Mountaineers in this dominating 42-21 win over the Cincinnati Bearcats to give West Virginia their 7th win overall on the season and their 5th win in Big 12 conference play, and should secure the Mountaineers finishing in the top half of the Big 12 Conference. And speaking of that Big 12 Conference, there were some interesting games here in Week 12 of the college football season within the Big 12, so want to recap some of those, as that will pretty much wrap up my thoughts on West Virginia's dominating performance here, but would love to hear your all's thoughts. Drop those in the comments. We appreciate those interactions as we continue to try and grow the Country Roads Webcast community throughout Mountaineer Nation. But let's take a look at some of those other results that happened around the conference here as we get set to wrap up episode 182 of the CRW podcast here by taking a look around the Big 12. All right, Mountaineer Nation, here we are with our final segment on episode 182 here to wrap up our Cincinnati review and reaction with our Around the Big 12 segment here. We're going to recap Week 12 within the college football conference this week, and we'll lead it off with the first game of the day, which was a surprising one, actually. BYU sticking right in with Oklahoma all the way to the end. Oklahoma only wins the game by a touchdown, securing the 31-24 road win over BYU. So kind of the result that you expected, Oklahoma getting the win, but not the way you expected them to do so. Shout out to BYU putting on a good performance and battling against the Sooners, ultimately coming out just a little bit short. And then, of course, we talked about the Mountaineers dominating the Bearcats from start to finish with the 42-21 victory and their home finale there on Senior Day and honoring Coach Nealon. And then TCU easily handles Baylor there in that rivalry game, 42-17. West Virginia's next opponent that they will face to close out the season there, the Baylor Bears, currently really struggling ahead of that game, and TCU has one of their better offensive outputs of the season, defeating them 42-17 there in Fort Worth. Then Oklahoma State has to come from behind, actually. Houston had a lead for a good portion of this game, especially in the first half, but a strong third quarter there from the Cowboys allows them to regain the lead and not look back. Good day from Ollie Gordon, over 150 yards rushing, and Alan Bowman with another over 300-plus yard passing performance ultimately gives Oklahoma State the 43-30 come-from-behind win over Houston there at Houston. And then we get Texas Tech versus UCF, and man, this was a good ball game right here. Talk about coming down to the wire when it is a 1-point game at the end there in Lubbock, as actually this game looked like it would be heading to overtime, but UCF's extra point attempt is blocked by Texas Tech, and then Texas Tech, using Taj Brooks and his strong running abilities, is able to run out the clock for the rest of the way, force UCF to use all their timeouts, and ultimately kneel it down and secure a 1-point home victory over UCF, 24-23 there. A good win for Texas Tech in a very tough, hard-fought football game. Back and forth there in that one, with UCF coming on strong there in the fourth quarter, but Texas Tech staves them off just enough to get the 1-point victory, 24-23 there. And then the nightcap, Texas and Iowa State thought this would be a good game, and that ended up certainly being the case. But ultimately, that Texas defense, and especially that Texas run defense, is the story at the end of the day. Iowa State, Rocco Beck throws for over 300 yards, but they wouldn't have been in the game if he hadn't done that, because Texas absolutely shut down the Iowa State running game. I believe they held him under 10 total rushing yards. That Texas defensive line has been impressive most of this season. They were there again in Ames. Not an easy place to play, and especially not an easy place to go get a 10-point victory. Texas does just that, handles their business 26-16 over the Cyclones. And then our game of the week here to wrap up our Around the Big 12 segment on episode 182 here was Kansas State versus Kansas. Thought this would be a good one, and man, was it ever. This rivalry is always fun, and this year this rivalry game had an impact on the conference race here within the Big 12, so it seems like they were fighting even harder, and it was a heck of a football game between Kansas State and Kansas that took place there in Lawrence. As freshman Cole Ballard got the start for the Jayhawks, Jason Bean was unable to go, and he played a pretty good football game for the Jayhawks, but the difference in the end is the Wildcats are able to force him to throw 2 interceptions, and they win that turnover battle, and ultimately that ends up leading to them winning on the scoreboard as well. As you see, Kansas State emerge victorious here, 31-27 over the Jayhawks in our game of the week to wrap up our Around the Big 12 segment here on episode 182 of the CRW podcast. So there you have it, Mountaineer Nation. My takeaways from the game against Cincinnati, complete with a bit of a stat review and then, of course, a recap of the rest of the action around the Big 12 from this past week. Sure were some good games, but obviously none better, in our opinion, than the performance put on by our Mountaineers. What a bounce back. Way to go out and show out for not only the seniors, but also for Coach Nealon. Win in dominating fashion in your final home contest, and we love to see it. Know all of you all did as well, and can't wait to cheer on the Mountaineers one more time in 2023, regular season wise anyways. We still got a bowl game, let's not forget about that, but one more time in the regular season next week. They'll take on Baylor, so be on the lookout for the release of our Baylor preview and predictions podcast coming later this week, and you can find out just when that will be released by staying tuned to our social media. We're on X at WVU Country Roads, and then we're just Country Roads Webcast on both Facebook and Instagram. Appreciate you tuning in this episode, whether you viewed it or listening to it. We appreciate you taking it in any way that you choose to do so here at the Country Roads Webcast, and we're already looking forward to the next episode here. Hope you all are as well. Having said that, as always, I'm Jordan Cruz, and until next time, let's go
If you
Mountaineers.
really want to know, then come on, let's go. Take a stroll down those